Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Observe Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Hay from WindowsObserver.com and IT Pro Today. That's what the site is. It's not SuperCycle Windows anymore. I will get that right at some point. Good to have you with me here for episode 263 on this 22nd day of April, 2018, and a special live broadcast of Observe Tech on YouTube live as I record this audio for the show. So I'm trying to kind of team the two together and give different options for viewing and listening to the podcast each week. So thanks for coming aboard. Good to have you here. We're going to start off by talking about that this show, we are announcing a new podcast logo. Had a great headshot hand-drawn by Reverend Geek, a Microsoft MVP and very talented user on YouTube, on Twitter, and with the art. And so he had offered out to do drawings for folks. And so I got a headshot done. And I've now incorporated that into a new podcast logo, which you will see associated with this podcast, both on WindowsObserver.com and on iTunes and the Google Play podcast store. So it's going to be there for everybody to take a look at. And I've got a link in the show notes so you can pull it up and look at it yourself. So let's talk a little bit about where we're at with the Windows Insider program, because with Windows Insiders, we're in that, last week we talked about the delay around 17133, build 17133, and that we had the issue that it had a bug. They decided to roll a new build, 17134, and that build was released last week, early, I believe that was Monday, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pull this up real quick and check it. 16th of April. Yeah, that's right. So it was on Monday. So on Monday, they rolled out 17134 for fast ring. So we'd gone fast ring, slow ring release preview with 17133, and they discovered the blocking bugs. So they re-rolled a new build the week before. And then on Monday of this past week, they released that build, the insiders in the fast ring. And then on Thursday, that build was moved to the slow ring. And then within an hour, Donna Sakar on Twitter said, hey, we're going to put that in release preview as well. Or maybe it was Friday. So it might have been Friday that they moved that. So they very quickly went from about 4 or 5 days later to slow ring. And then within an hour went to release preview. Now, there are some folks on Twitter that think that's a little bit of release fever, that they want to get this because they're already delayed. They want to get it pushing through and get it evaluated. Granted, when it's on fast ring and slow ring, there's about 65% of the devices that have it that are insiders. That's the number of people that are in there, 25% in fast, 40% in slow. And then you fill out the rest, the other 35%, when you get to release preview ring. So as of Friday, that's pushing out to everybody. Hopefully they're getting a lot of data back on it, and that will allow them to make a release decision very soon. I don't expect it would be this week, but it's very possible we could see a release the following week for this build, the feature update to finally go out, what we know as Redstone 4. Skip ahead, folks. You got 17650. Real quick, 17134, no new features. They just fixed the bug apparently and then pushed it on out. Now, I will tell you this. The moment they announced slow ring and preview ring, and it was Friday because I had to run some errands at lunchtime. When they announced it at lunchtime, I came home and my system started to have that Explorer crash again, the same one I was having a couple weeks earlier on 17133. So turns out the root cause may be associated with timeline. I disabled timeline on all my devices, all my RS4 and RS5 devices. I cleared the timeline data and the bug is not recurring. So I'm going to stay in that state until they tell me the bug is fixed or it's sorted out. But it is something I put in through the feedback hub. Several of you have upvoted, and Microsoft is working on that. So it is getting resolved. So 17650 for skip ahead in for the next release of the feature update. That is going to be Redstone 5. That's due this fall around the September timeframe. And they will take and have that available if you're in Skip Ahead, there is no more room in Skip Ahead. You can't get in there. There was a registry hack that apparently is not working anymore. So the ability to get into Skip Ahead is not there. Now, when Redstone 4 releases, if 17134 is that build, and it's released in the next couple of weeks, you can fully expect at some point, once they make that decision, that the Skip Ahead branch that we're seeing Redstone 5 in, that will also move into FastRing. So everybody can sign into FastRing and get those updates. And there are a few updates in 17650. They did some tweaking with Windows Defender Security Center. It got a little bit of a Fluent design refresh, so it's getting some of that transparency effect. Windows Defender Firewall got support for Windows Subsystem for Linux processes. And there were they fixed that file. There's a bug in Skip Ahead that the toolbar, the ribbon would not stay open. Even if you left it open, it's supposed to remain that way. Subsequent reboots or opening of Explorer, it would be closed. They fixed that bug. They fixed a few other issues around it. Again, there's not a whole lot going on in 17650. They have sets in there. Things are working as far as sets goes, but there is not a whole lot of other information that's been released as part of the Skip Ahead branch right now. We're waiting to see more of that. Now, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but there are a couple things we're expecting to see and that people have seen in the code, Cloud Power Clipboard, and a dark theme for Windows Explorer, for File Explorer. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, so 17650 for Skip Ahead, 17134 for Fast. And then, of course, that means for those of you who jumped onto 17133 because it was believed it was going to be the final release, I won't call it RTM. I'll talk about that in a minute. You had a window where you could actually go into the release preview, download 17133, and then leave the Insider program without any penalty. You could take and not have to reinstall an updated version of Windows. So that magic window, as Paul Thurrott has written about again, has opened back up because of the change with 17134. So if you wanted to go ahead and, hope that 17134 is that release, we've now been through the experience where a build in release preview does not necessarily mean, now granted, this is the first time it's happened. 17133 was the first ever build that's gone to release preview that's not gone to final release. So if you believe that 134 may be that build, you can go into release preview in the Insider program, download it, install it, and then leave the Insider program and stay on 134. And then when the commercial release, the retail release comes out, you'll get updated through that channel. So it's possible to go ahead and get the build if you want to do that. If you're still on 17133 for whatever reason, you're going to have to re-enroll in the Insider program, and you just have to go into release preview. Go into release preview, and then you will be able to download that update and take care of that right there. Couple things, Flight Hub. There is a Flight Hub on Azure websites that Brandon LeBlanc built that kind of helps to track the releases of the different builds for the different either rings or for different systems like IoT server and, of course, client. Well, they've now moved that, or it is being moved and replicated over on Microsoft Docs, a new Flight Hub. And apparently that is going to be the new official home of the Flight Hub and other technical documentation for the Insider program. So the link is live. It's already there. It's updated. It's actually more up to date than the original Azure-based, Azure websites-based Flight Hub. So you can bookmark them both. I've got them both on my start menu so that I can access them very easily. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this whole 17133 thing. And this may take up a lot of my podcast, and I'm okay with that. Well, it won't take up a lot. I'll still talk about some other headlines I've got. But this is an important kind of thing to talk about, and I'll tell you why. When 171, there's this insistence upon the enthusiasts, the followers of Microsoft, those of us that are insiders, those of us that look for these builds and things like that. There's this sense that we need to know when that final build's going to be. Because back in the days of Windows 7, Windows Vista, and all the different versions of Windows before them, we always had what was called RTM, release to manufacturing. All right. And that RTM build had to be produced, and it had to be burnt onto DVDs to be sent to OEMs. It was because release to manufacturing meant the OEMs, the computer builders, got the build so they could install it on brand new hardware that was coming out at the same time of the new version of Windows. Now, this was easy to do when everything was on a 3-year cycle. Hardware got refreshed every 3 years. The operating system got refreshed every 3 years. Well, that's not the case anymore. Most OEMs, including Microsoft, for the most part, are refreshing their hardware lines every 12 to 18 months. And we're building Windows. Windows is being built into this Windows as a service thing where we're getting, every month we are in a development cycle for a new feature update for Windows 10. So, and now in the day and age of electronic delivery, you don't have to ship a bunch of code to somebody on a disk to be able to do installs. They can go download it from the partner website. So it's important to understand RTM is not a thing anymore. RTM is an old kind of moniker that we need to stop using. And I'll tell you for a couple different reasons. But first, let's talk a little bit of background about how we got where we are with 17133. First 3 weeks ago, 17133 was released on the 27th of March as a fast ring build. That was just like any other fast ring build, the 25 previous builds that have been released. And we it was the second build that didn't have a watermark. So again, when the watermark comes off, a lot of people get into that kind of release mode. They're like, hey, this is it. This is the final build. This is the final build. Even though Microsoft in the release notes makes a point to say this is not the final build, people still jump on it and believe it's the final build because the watermark's gone. Well, this was the second build without a watermark. So we had the same caveat. We had the same warnings that it was going to be like that. And then we're in the release branch already, right? So Microsoft earlier in the cycle had moved to skip aheads for Redstone 5. They went into RS pre-release, and then RS4 release became the release branch, and that's where the release will come from for this feature update, whatever it's going to be called. We still don't know that for sure. So we're moving on. People are starting to believe it's RTM. People are writing it up as RTM. The headlines say RTM. Social media says RTM. I mean, it is an RTM world out there. And so just like you, I took and enrolled in Release Preview Ring on all my test devices, and I put 17133 on those devices. I keep 2 devices. I actually have Surface Laptop that's on Windows 10S. I leave on production, that's on 1709. And I have Surface Book 2, which is what I'm actually recording this YouTube live on. I have it set to production as well. So it's 1709. First off, that gives me references for the current production version of Windows, and then it gives me something to upgrade when the time comes. So that's where we stand. Then 2 weeks ago, March 30th, a week after the release of 17133, Microsoft put it into the slow ring. So like I said, fast ring includes about 25% of the Windows insiders. When you add the 40% that are part of slow ring, you've now got 65% of the Windows insider community that are working on Windows builds and working on the test builds. So we're at 65%. It's in slow ring, not a problem. This is very normal. Going from fast ring and putting a build in slow ring, we don't get a lot of slow ring builds during the development cycle, but when you're this late in the cycle, when that build hits slow ring, there's a lot of, and that watermark's not on there. There's a lot of kind of discussion out there that says, this is it. This is the final release. This is RTM. And so we're at that point, right? So April 5th, that is about another week or so later, Windows 10 Redstone build 17133 gets released to insiders in the preview ring. All right. Now builds don't go to preview ring routinely. During a development cycle, the only time in the past that builds have gone to the release preview ring is when they're one step away from being the final build, the one that will get released to general availability and to everybody who's on Windows 10 production, right? So this is even more concrete, even more cement that tells people this is it. This is the final build. So people are making plans. By this point, though, we started to hear reports of trouble with the slow ring build, that there had been some indications that there were some issues. As it went to release preview, these things got confirmed by a broader audience. And so on April 9th, Microsoft updated their release notes. Originally on April 5th, the release preview build was going to release slowly over the weekend. You could go get it manually, but then on Monday, they would push it to all these systems running 17133 that were enrolled in release preview. But what happened was they postponed that. They decided, because that's the weekend after it went to release preview, that some of these issues cropped up and they started to see these blue screens of death, apparently, that they decided to hold up on where they were headed with this build. So it was not pushed to all release preview devices. Now, people could still go get it. I tested this. People could still go get 17133 in release preview, but they stopped the process of rolling it out. So the next day, on April 10th, there was another update to the release notes for 17133, And in that update, Microsoft advised insiders in the fast, slow, and release preview rings that a cumulative update had been released for Windows 10 Redstone 4 build 17133. Now, this apparently had some fixes for security issues. It may have had some fixes that may have been related to the blue screen of death. We're not sure. It did talk about some security and stability stuff. It talked about a PDF security bug in Microsoft Edge, an issue that prevented IE from identifying some custom controls, and security updates to IE, Microsoft Edge, the Microsoft scripting engine, Windows kernel, Microsoft graphics component, and Windows Server, Windows cryptography, and Windows data center networking. That's a lot of different stuff to get an update and a cumulative update. So it could have been related for this. Now, what happened at this point is after this release this was Patch Tuesday for April, right? This was when there were some suspicions, there were some indications that Microsoft was going to release Redstone 4, the feature update, on the 10th of April. And so when that didn't happen, that started another discussion process. Was it really the final build? Is it the final build? Oh, guess what? It's not the final build. And then BuildFeed, which is a Twitter account that tracks when builds are compiled inside of Microsoft, tracked a build 17134.1 that got built out or compiled at Microsoft. So on the Tuesday that we were expecting Redstone 4, another build was rolled in Microsoft. Now, this is not abnormal, but it was a good indicator that something else was going on. And then a week later, around 6 p.m., Microsoft pushed that build to Windows 10 insiders in the fast ring. That was last Monday. Okay, that was the 16th. So we started a new cycle, right? That we knew we were going to go through normal kind of release channels. And then, of course, on Friday, around lunchtime, East Coast time, slow ring, 17133 went to slow ring. And then you took an hour later, Donna Sakar tweets and says, hey, we've pushed that to release preview too. So a little bit of release fever, maybe, a little bit of anxiousness to get it out there and get it in as many hands as possible. But it's out there now. So 17134 is potentially the new final build. And again, it's in the release preview ring now. So that would be the strong indicator that it is possibly the final build. That means the window has opened. That means you can go enroll in Insider Release Preview, install 134 on any device you want to, pull out of the Insider build through your settings, and you won't be penalized. You'll be on 134, and then when the the retail updates start coming out, you'll get updated on that as well. And then maybe on whatever day they choose to release this build, we'll have a cumulative update that will catch things up and take care of any remaining issues. I know for me, that timeline bug is on 134. It was on 133, and now it's on 134 as well. But Microsoft is working on that bug. So I don't know that that's a blocking bug or that it was part of the blocking bugs, but it's most certainly a bug. They've got it. It's in action. And I have been told that they have determined the root cause of that bug being timeline. So that's where we stand. That's kind of what happened with 133 and how we got to 134. But what it really drives home for me and what I wrote, I wrote, oh my gosh, I wrote 2,000 words on this on windowsobserver.com about, and I'm kind of summarizing that to you now. But, this release to manufacturing nomenclature, it's just ancient. The way Windows as a service works now, twice a year feature updates. Technically, Microsoft has told us March and September are the targets for their releases. People get around those targets, and then we see certain happenings, certain sequence of events in the Insider program with builds, like going from fast, slow, no watermark, and then the release preview. Man, that's a good, strong indicator that we're getting a final build. Well, we've just learned for the first time that that's not always going to be the case. We just got 134 because 133 wasn't ready. So, and now it's release preview. Now it looks like 134 is going to be that final release, but let's call it what it is. Okay. Let's stop calling it release to manufacturing. Let's call it release preview. Release preview kind of harkens back to the days of release candidates when Microsoft was testing operating system back in those days. When we had RTM, when we had release to manufacturing, Microsoft would release to us testers what were called release candidates. And these were potential candidates for release, barring any kind of showstoppers, any kind of blocking bugs. And so when we would get these builds, we would have to jump into them pretty quick and run through several scenarios in order to test whether or not they were ready for standard release yet. And then we'd give that feedback to Microsoft through, back in those days, it was called Connect. Now it's called Collaborate. And Microsoft would make a decision. Yep, this is it. They would tag that the gold build. That is the build that would then be burnt and sent to OEMs as a release to manufacturing. And then eventually it would arrive in retail roughly 4 to 6 weeks after that, give or take. It always varied a little bit. Now, in this day and age of downloads, it's instantaneous almost. Once they decide to release and push it out, they pick the day of the release and they prep the systems and they get it front loaded, and then it comes out. So I think what we have to do is we have to stop focusing on this release to manufacturing. We have to stop focusing on this just weird desire to know what the final build of the Windows 10 features update is. Because in the cycle of Windows as a service, it's going to be ready when it's ready, and it's going to be released when it's ready. It's kind of like Microsoft. You know, when we go to Build here in a couple of weeks in Seattle, we're going to hear from Joe Belfiore about Windows 10 and probably hear about some features they're planning for Windows 10. But I guarantee you, we will not hear this is for Redstone 5. This is for the first release of 2019. They're going to stop talking in that kind of language. It just creates issues, because then the stories get written that said, you know, they cut this, they cut that, didn't make the build, didn't get done. Well, none of them, even that stuff like Cloud Power Clipboard and Timeline, even though Microsoft did say in the build video it was coming in the fall creators update, that ended up not being the case. They took some heat for that through the tech press. Guarantee you they are not going to tie dates and times to features anymore. And I think it's part of the reason why they're getting away from the Redstone code name, if that's happening, and they're going to go to this 19H1, 19H2. It's the first half of 2019. It's the second half of 2019. Gives them a broader window, gives them more flexibility, and I truly do think that's what's going to happen. So let's start something new here. Let's start calling these things what they are. Right now, 17134 is a release preview. It has the potential to be the final build for this feature update, Redstone 4, the code name that we've been testing for the last 6 or 7 months. But it's a release preview. It is not the final build. It is not RTM, because RTM, even in the back in the days of RTM was never given to manufacturers, or you know, RTM was going to manufacturers. Release preview is not a build that would happen on. Now, there are OEMs that are part of the Insider program and part of what's called TAP, which is Technology Advancement Program, where they can get early access to these builds, get ISOs for it, and test it that way on their hardware. And a lot of companies are already doing that, have been doing that for a couple of years. HP is a good example of that. Lenovo is another good example. So people are already using the Insider program to get these builds as they build new hardware to test things, right? And we're not talking about major architectural changes now between one feature update to the next, like it was back in the days of Windows 7, for instance, or Vista, when it was a 3-year cycle to the update. Then there were significant architectural changes and things like that. So things have changed. I think we've got to take a different approach to it, and we've just got to kind of, you know, pull back on the reins a little bit and not get so wrapped around the axle about release to manufacturing. The final build will be released when it's released. Do we get some good, strong indicators? Absolutely, yes, we do. But that's not necessarily a guarantee that that's what we're going to see. And we saw that with 17133. Everybody went off the end of that cliff. Final release, RTM, install. Turns out it had a pretty bad blocking bug. Resulted in Microsoft releasing a new build in order to kind of tie things up and clean things up. And now that's where we stand. And we're on the potential release of a final build, but it's in release preview right now. That means it's being tested at that level, and barring anything coming up that would be negative, that will then be released to the final build, not what will be pushed out to all the current production machines that are running Windows 10 version 1709 or even 1703. All right, so there you go. That is my rant about 17133 and RTM and all of that kind of stuff. I know it took some time, but I think it's an important subject. And I think it's important that we talk about that. We kind of just work really hard to get on the same page when it comes to this, because I think it's important, because it sets proper expectations. And don't forget, you know what? We're the geeks. We're the enthusiasts. We're the ones paying attention to this stuff. Everyday users out there could care less what the feature update is called. They just want their computer to turn on when it turns on. When they hit the power button, they want the computer to come on. They want their web, they want their mail, they want their web browsing, they want those apps that they might use. But the reality is, the vast majority of people, means nothing to them. They won't even realize they get a new feature update until it installs and downloads on their system. They get prompted to restart. So us enthusiasts are the ones that are really wrapped around the axle about this. And I'll include myself in this, but I work really hard, and you'll see it from me on social media. I don't get wrapped into that RTM thing. I challenge RTM. I challenge the concept of RTM when it comes to this stuff, because it's not the true statement of fact of where the OS is or where the feature update is. Right now, it's a release preview. That's all it is, plain and simple. Potential to become the final build, but not necessarily the final build. Okay, So that's where we stand on that. All right, let's talk a little bit more about where we're at with stuff. Let me get a drink of coffee here. You know, I used to take these long pauses when I'm recording, and I edit the long pauses out at the end because I've got away to what's called truncate silence with Audacity. But now that I'm doing the video, you guys get to see the pause. You get to see me take a sip of my coffee and everything like that. All right, so let's run down some headlines, some Microsoft-related headlines of this past week. Satya Nadella made Time's list of the world's 100 most influential people, and there's a really good commentary by what's his name, Isaacson, the guy who wrote the Steve Jobs's biography. So that's an interesting read right there. Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are all fighting for number 2 now. Microsoft has recently pushed up into the number 2 spot with the great stuff their stock is doing. They are now the second most valuable country here in the United States, or actually on the planet. They are ahead of Amazon and Google right now and behind Apple. Apple's way out there. Apple's a couple $100 billion away from where Microsoft is right now. We talked about the release for Windows 10. We don't know when it's going to be out. Twitter PWA, the progressive web app on Windows 10 on Redstone 4 and Redstone 5 builds that's being tested in an open beta by insiders, continues to get improved every week, new features. The latest is pinned user tiles. Everybody's been calling these in other tech stories live tiles. And while it shows the user's avatar and their handle, their Twitter handle, it doesn't show any other information. The main Twitter live tile, when you pin it to start, doesn't show incoming tweets or direct messages or anything like that. So they're the first step to live tiles, but they aren't live tiles in and of themselves because live tiles inherently have live information on them. So the user profiles look great. Don't get me wrong. The user pin tiles look awesome because it takes your avatar and creates that tile. But we are not getting live data through those tiles yet. So they're not live tiles in the true sense of the word, but they are certainly the first steps in that process. Windows Maps has been updated, so you can now share your collections. You can save search places, and it's the latest insider update on Windows Map. Another big discussion point this week was OneNote. We got the official word from Microsoft that OneNote 2016 isn't being deprecated, but it's not being actively developed anymore. So when Office 2019, a standalone version of Office that they announced at Ignite last year, when it comes out this fall, it will not include OneNote. What you happen is every version of Windows 10 and Office 2019 will only install on Windows 10. We'll get OneNote for Windows 10, which is a universal Windows platform app. That means, which is already there. It's already in the store. It's pre-installed when you install Windows 10, and it is free. It costs nothing, and they have been doing some tremendous work on this app. And while it doesn't have all the features from the desktop version, the current OneNote 2016, they are slowly working to add as many of those as possible and those that make sense as well. So what will happen is when you install Office 2019, you'll still have the option to use OneNote 2016, but it won't be by default. It'll be the Windows 10 app. If you're currently using OneNote 2016, you'll be able to continue to use it. I think, what did I finally figure out the date was? I want to say that the date goes all the way out to like 2020. Is it 2025 or something like that? No, that can't be right. Hang on a minute. Let me pull up the FAQ they did. So it's about to leave standard support, I think. Can I continue to use those? So, all right. So yeah, I was right. So 2020. So in 2 years, October 2020, OneNote 2016 will leave mainstream support. That's where it gets feature fixes, it gets bug fixes and security fixes, right? Total support, total maintenance. Although Microsoft with this announcement is saying they are not adding new features to OneNote 2016, but they're still going to take care of the bugs and the other issues. Mainstream support ends on October 13th, 2020. That's the Navy's birthday, by the way. And then on October 14th, 2025, the 5-year period of extended support will end. So people who like OneNote 2016 have still got 7 more years of use out of it, right? Or 2025. Yeah, we're in 18. So yeah, 7 years. So you still have more than 7 years use coming out of OneNote 2016, and gives you plenty of time to watch what happens with OneNote for Windows 10 and see the development and maybe start to make that shift. So that created a lot of consternation this week, a lot of concern by people who like the desktop app and use it. I personally haven't opened it for years. I use the OneNote for Windows 10 exclusively across all my devices, and it works extremely well. So, and they've made some tremendous work on it. Excuse me. Some Windows 10 tips from the Windows Experience blog. They're always publishing these things. And this is like choosing your performance and reminding people of features that are part of Windows 10. And this is kind of an educational reminder: performance and battery balance options, built-in currency converter, annotating books in Microsoft Edge, lowering the blue light, using PC Nightlight, and pinning your favorite websites to the taskbar. These were all features that became Fall Creators Update or higher. So if you're on Fall Creators Update, those are things that you can do with your system. Microsoft reorg. This was an interesting story from Mary Jo Foley this week. It looks like Microsoft did a little bit more reorganization. This wasn't an official announcement, but it looks like, according to Mary Jo, Microsoft Corporate Vice President Joe Belfiore picked up some new reports. He is going to, let's see, he is one of Rajesh Jha's lieutenants, kind of helping to run the Experience and Devices division, right? And what they have done is, so Joe Belfiore is running the Windows Client Experience team, which includes Windows Shell and the Edge browser. But this week, it looks like OneNote, and the To-Do folks and them have moved underneath the Joe B as part of his network, his Experiences and Devices team. So he is that is a new kind of configuration there with those two things. So it's something we're going to keep looking at. We also know that Javier Soltero, who is a corporate vice president, moved from Office to Cortana. So a lot of people are excited because he's done a lot for Office. Is excited to see where he goes now for Cortana and does with Cortana. So a little bit of reorganization there in bringing the OneNote team, and which is they also do To-Do. They also do sticky notes, by the way, in case you didn't know that. All of those folks are now following under the Experiences and Devices team under Joe Belfiore. Tech firm pledges for not assisting governments in cyber attacks. This was a little note from Microsoft Legal. Microsoft President Brad Smith. A group of 34 companies have signed a tech accord that says they will not work with governments or participate in government efforts for cyber attacks. So you've got, I mean, these firms range from VMware, Trend Micro, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Nielsen, Nokia, Oracle, GitHub, F-Secure, Facebook, Avast, Bitdefender, CA Technology, Cisco, Cloudflare, DataStax. So this tech accord has been signed by these companies, and they are agreeing to not participate, and they will protect their customers from organizations or anybody that wants to attempt to make cyber attacks and things like that. So that is just kind of good press right there. New services and trust portal for Microsoft privacy and GDPR, general data protection regulations. Those go into effect in just a little more than a month on 25 May 2018. Microsoft and all the big companies that do cloud have tools available for you to be able to get ready for that and to sort it out. So you can check out those tools on each site. I've been writing about this on itprotoday.com, so you can find my stories there and find some links to those resources as well. Office 365 has a new secure score. Now, if you are an Office 365 business subscriber, you can access this. It helps you kind of establish some security habits for reviewing logs, reviewing reports, multi-factor authentication settings that allow you to get your score in a range that matches with your peers in your industry. If you're a small business, this works if you're doing Office 365 for business, or if you're a large enterprise. So pretty interesting little tool there. There's a plan in place for Skype for business migrations to Microsoft Teams. So I've just seen a recent update on that, and I've got a link for you there. The Supreme Court, you remember that Microsoft was involved in a data privacy case around emails stored in Ireland. Well, now because of the Cloud Act, which we talked about a few weeks ago that the U.S. passed, Microsoft has petitioned the Supreme Court, and they have dropped this privacy case around that email because there's a new system in place, a new process. New Windows 10 driver failure report is in the Hardware Dev Center. So if you work with hardware, you're an OEM or you're a manufacturer of some kind and have a piece of gear and you need hardware failure reports, this is the place to go. They did some new announcements this week, a cooperation between Windows Hello and FIDO2 security keys. There are some new keys coming out that will allow people to walk up to a machine in an enterprise and plug their key in, and that will validate them and log them in using their biometrics or password. So to lock down profiles and security things. Microsoft, this is an interesting release. This past week when Google released Chrome version 66, Microsoft released a Chrome extension that provides the features of a smart screen. So you get those warnings when you go to a possible phishing site or a suspect file or things like that, or phishing attempts. And so this is now incorporated as part of a Chrome extension that gives you this same capability we have in Edge and IE. Now we can have in Chrome by using this extension. I installed it and I've been using it. Of course, I obviously avoid going to those sites, but I did go to the test demo site and everything worked as expected. So that's a nice little feature update there if you're using Chrome as well. Some more work on tech support scams. You know, tech support scams keep coming up because they keep being an issue. And the Microsoft Secure team is talking about some of the work that they're doing to protect against tech support scams. Microsoft, between the antivirus, the email, the URL blocking, the browser stuff like Smart Screen that I just mentioned, you know, and then reminding people, Microsoft doesn't send unsolicited email messages or make unsolicited phone calls to give you support for your Windows system. All right, your system is not reporting that you've got an error back to Microsoft that would result in a phone call. Microsoft also will not proactively reach out to you and provide unsolicited PC or technical support. You usually initiate that process, and then they will call you back because you initiated it. Therefore, you're expecting it. And don't call the number in pop-ups. A lot of people are using pop-ups in the browser to get you to call a number that looks like Microsoft support because you quote unquote have an issue, and then it is not. It's actually a tech support scam. So about 15% of customers in 2017, Microsoft Customer Support Services got 153,000 reports from customers who encountered or fell victim to tech support scams. This is a 24% growth from the previous year. 183 different countries. That means this is not just a US problem. This is all over the world. About 15% of those customers lost money, between $200 and $400. Then once they get you and they know you pay, it's like ransomware. They will keep coming back to the well and keep trying to get you to pay more. So it's a very interesting survey to read about and to understand what it is that they're doing there. Let's see what else happened. Lenovo became the first Microsoft OEM to partner up to use Windows Autopilot. Windows Autopilot is this process that enterprise companies can use where a brand new piece of hardware can be shipped straight to a desktop or to a person. Let's say you had a remote employee. You can have set it up on your end with the serial number of the device and all that information. And when your user opens it up from being a brand new out-of-the-box device, it will automatically validate their identity and then connect to your servers and put on the right kind of build, the right software, the right configurations, and everything like that right at the person's desktop as long as they have a connection to the internet. So Lenovo is the first company that's formally supporting Autopilot and now shipping devices that can be set up in this way. So if you're looking to, you've got a remote worker that needs a new system and you buy Lenovo, go use Lenovo's Windows Autopilot, set that up, and then you don't have to first ship it to you, have your IT folks image it, and then ship it to the user and then go through the setup process. Now that is done through the Windows Autopilot. What else? Third-party Uber and YouTube PWA apps. There was some report last week that some person, an individual, it looked like, was pulling in PWA apps, putting wrappers around them, and putting them in the Microsoft Store because of all the excitement around PWAs. Not his apps. He was simply putting them in the PWA in the store, and they've pulled out. At least Uber and YouTube has protested this to Microsoft, and they pulled those PWA apps. This past week, Microsoft did add more. About 7 or 8 more PWA apps. They're not any big names yet, but this is part of Microsoft's process to go out, scan the web, pull in these PWA apps, and put them in the store. And then developers, like we talked about last week, can go in and claim their PWA app and start working on it and start doing further development. Interesting little tool got released through Thurrott.com and Rafael Rivera called Mach 2. It's a tool that you can use on pre-release versions of Windows that help you unlock some of the features they might be working on. Now, these are incomplete features, not ready for general release. That's why they're not visible, but this kind of unlocks those little hidden switches that let you check those things out. Could cause your system to go be very unstable, but your risk, your warning, you can go check it out and download it if you want. Microsoft OneDrive for Android got the ability to recover deleted files. Again, this is a feature that's been rolling out to OneDrive, and now the Android app now has that capability as well. New Microsoft account gets a little Fluent Design. I actually got this. This story is about a week old, but I got this Fluent Design update on my Microsoft account yesterday. I saw it for the first time, shared some shots via Twitter. It looks very interesting. It looks very bright, big, responsive. Not every sub page has been updated yet, but the main page has, and some of the others have as well. So that is part of what they're doing there. New capabilities for Windows Defender ATB, that's Advanced Threat Protection, typically something that enterprise and business folks are going to see. They're really working on making the endpoint security really robust and key because the endpoint security is where we control the entry for a lot of different things into our networks. And so ATP, every cycle, there's new security features, new enterprise features that work around security. Azure Security Center was announced at RSA conference this past week in San Francisco. And so there's a new security center for kind of managing all the security capabilities that come out of Azure for your end users, for your clients, for your apps, for anything and everything related to security. That now has a centralized spot on the Azure dashboard. Then I got a link here to a story that talks about 3 ways Azure helps to protect your security and improve it like that. I mentioned earlier Windows 10 File Explorer getting a dark theme. That is the story that I got from Thurrott.com. Microsoft Translator has beefed up its offline capabilities, and it's got some new AI translations. So now the ability exists that if you have a translator app and you don't have connectivity, you can still do the translations because the data is locally stored, locally cached through the app on your device. So you can do that very thing. And So you can do that, and you can have that information available right there at your fingertips, whether you're connected to the internet or not. Do you remember the kind of viral picture a few weeks ago, maybe it's been more than a few weeks ago, of the teacher, I think he was located in Africa, that was hand drawing the interface to a computer to teach kids about computers? Well, he recently attended an education conference here in the U.S. with the help of Microsoft. Got some new tools. His whole classroom now has laptops and computers to be able to learn right on the computer instead of having to draw on a chalkboard. And so it's just a neat, feel-good story to see Microsoft doing this kind of outreach for that kind of thing. And there's another new story about Microsoft's giving. Microsoft has a robust giving program for their employees. Microsoft matches that giving. They give a lot of opportunity there for them to do good. I had to bookmark this story. This is from Mary Branscombe, who she writes articles for different things. And this is her 500 words into the future column on ZDNet. But she goes on a bit of a rant about the running joke that cloud is just somebody else's computer. And she goes on to explain that it's a very different experience. It's not just somebody else's computer, but it talks about it being a data center, talks about protections, physical and electronic protections. So it's just an interesting read, but it was a funny way that she kind of engages you to talk about the fact that the cloud is not just somebody else's computer. It's way more than that. Let's see. Windows 10, Microsoft is Linux app security. Windows Defender Firewall now has the ability to plug in Windows for subsystems for Linux processes into the firewall to give them permission to move back and forth. So that's a new addition. You saw maybe in the last few weeks, Microsoft also took and released the ability to roll your own version of Linux into Windows Subsystem for Linux as well. So a lot of robustness happening there as well. Windows developer stuff. The 2018 Windows Developer Community Pulse survey is out. So there's a link here for you if you're a developer to go answer questions around that. Of course, we've got Build coming up in a few weeks, so there'll be a lot going on with developers here soon. Windows Template Studio 2.0 was released this past week. So the latest upgrade to that tool, it's a tool that helps you kind of with pre-built, pre-existing, pre-formatted, prefab elements of apps that make it easy to bring in features and things like that to a universal Windows platform app. It's community supported, community developed. So it's a great open source project. Windows Community Stand-Up happened this past week. They talked about improvements in the web and backend for developers around some PWA stuff. But also just in general for the next feature update to Windows 10. Software developers are changing. This was an interesting story from ZDNet. I don't think this was a Mary Jo story. No, it was Simon Bison. Okay, for his 500 words into the future article. So him and Mary Branscombe, if you don't know, are married. So he did one about software developers this past week and talked about how things are changing, how they're learning differently, and how developer relationships is making a significant change. And he kind of ties that to developer conferences and talks about how that changes developer conferences themselves. So another good read right there from him. Learning to code, a mobile app to teach you how to code. This was on Thurrott.com this past week. But again, they're looking for different ways to teach you how to use programming and how to develop coding skills. And this is another one of those. But this time it's through a mobile app. I mean, if you can learn a language through a mobile app, can't you learn to code through a mobile app as well? Big story here about how Microsoft moved the Microsoft Windows Store, Xbox, and Surface repro on GitHub is 350 gigabytes in size, just massive, massive, massive. And Microsoft has moved that to GitHub. It's happened a while back, but they talk more about how that happened, how they've done it, and how they manage that. So it's an interesting read right there. Microsoft Build 2018, getting ready for Microsoft Build. We keep talking about it. Channel 9 is doing a series of weekly videos in preparation for that. This week, it's all about food. The eats, where can you go eat in Seattle to find some good food? And they go across some of the really good options that are there. Microsoft SharePoint team has started a new podcast called The Intrazone. So I've got a link for you here. If you are a SharePoint person, then that is most definitely going to be up your alley. Xbox E3 briefing details are coming out from the Xbox team. So that E3 briefing will be in June, I think. And they're announcing opportunities to get tickets and entry to that, as well as for their big festival fest that they have, their Xbox E3 Fest that they have as well. Speaking of the Xbox, again, we've just started rolling into alpha preview into 1805 updates, which is the next cycle of updates for the Xbox console. Lots of new features coming out. We got a new update yesterday that is making available like 120 megahertz refresh rates and other features like that. We haven't seen anything with the avatars. I thought maybe the avatars would be part of this, and it still could be. But it was interesting that this past week, a former Microsoft designer who worked on the avatar team for you remember these, right? This was E3 last year. And they were the really slick looking ones, and they had things like prosthetics and wheelchairs, and it was very inclusive. Well, it never came to fruition. And then just this past week, leaks surfaced from a designer that apparently worked on those avatars and no longer works for Microsoft. The video has unfortunately been pulled, but there's some screenshots in the link I've got, and it's those same shots. So it's the same avatars. So very high end, very much, very high quality stuff. So you can check those out. Don't know if that's part of the upcoming update to the Xbox One console, but it certainly has the potential to get in there. They say it's coming. We've seen some indicators it's coming. We just haven't seen them yet. Also, a new Xbox career system got exposed this past week. This came from Windows Central. And it's this career system that will allow you to earn points. So it's kind of like the Insider program. But it will go along your gamer score, and it's going to let you build up skills that are tied to your gaming stuff. So total playtime across all games, updated at specific milestones, XP level milestones, the number of games you played, playing a set number of games per day, competing on Xbox Live, creating content on Xbox Live, like sharing images, sharing video, and earning regular gamer score achievements. So that's just some of the stuff that's part of this Xbox career mode, or whatever this is going to serve the purpose of. What else? Samsung Galaxy 9, Paul has done his second part of his review. He's talking about the camera now. By the way, I believe somebody is about to do a comparison of these high-end cameras with an older Windows phone as well, I heard. So that'll be interesting to see when that comes out. Android Oreo jumped up to 3.5% in the latest Android distribution report. This is a big deal because typically subsequent builds of Android are really slow at rolling out. And this was a significant jump, according to Clinton Fitch at clintonfitch.com. And he tracks this kind of stuff. So he's very much aware that 3.5%, while it doesn't sound like a lot, was a big jump when it came to this specific version of Android Oreo. Some more information from Google about security in their cloud. We talk a lot about Azure security. Well, Google's doing the same thing. And obviously Amazon is as well. So lots of security discussions happening. And this is all driving towards, probably a big chunk of it is GDPR. 25 May, the General Data Protection Regulations go into effect. So there's a lot of folks out there working hard to get in compliance, so they're ready for that deadline. What else have we got? G Suite Enterprise for Education now available. It was in preview before. You know, Microsoft releases G Suite for Education for free for staff and students. G Suite Enterprise for Education is not free. There is a cost, a subscription cost per user. And they are offering a special deal for 3 years, you know, where you get students for free, staff for $2, half price. But it also includes tools for management, whereas the G Suite for Education doesn't have those tools. So if you're in a big organization, this might be what you're looking for if you're using G Suite in your education and you're looking for a management tool. And so, like I said, normal cost $4 per subscriber per month. That's only $2 per subscriber right now, and they will honor any, and you've got to move your whole system over to it, and they will honor that renewal price for 3 years. Google Google selling its Daydream View headset for $49. It was $99. So I actually got rid of my Google Cardboard as I'm doing a massive clear out and clean up. I got rid of my Google Cardboard. So I've got the Oculus, not the Oculus. I've got the Gear VR, barely pull it out. So, you know, that phone related VR stuff, I'm just not doing much of these days. What else? Google autocomplete. You know how Google pops up autocompletes in their search box? I got a link to a story on their blog about how that comes about, what it means. Google also in their Zero project thing has called out Microsoft about a very medium kind of threat issue on Windows 10s that requires physical access to the device. And Microsoft has told them the fix is coming as part of Redstone 4. But of course, we know Redstone 4's patch feature update has been released. Google doesn't consider that a general patch, and therefore they have outed the error and now made that and exposed it. There's a proof of concept. So Google, you know, I think it's great what they do with these 0-day things, but they have to play better in the sandbox. And, you know, they're a big tech company. Microsoft is a big tech company. They should be big boys and girls, and they should just come together and figure this out and not out a vulnerable out thing. There are ways to work around that. It's kind of frustrating. Amazon Web Service, Netflix has been a big AWS customer looking to move to Google maybe. We saw that. Amazon has teamed up with Best Buy. They're going to sell Insignia and Toshiba TVs with Fire TV built in. I find this funny. You guys know I used to work for Best Buy. I didn't work for them for long, about 8 months. I was a security guy, and then I was the Microsoft consultant for the store, basically a computer salesman. But Best Buy has always been a showroom. People come in to look at hardware and physical things there, and then they go order it from Amazon. Well, this is the first step of Amazon actually, you know, embracing that concept, but now they're going to put the products in the store themselves in order to be there ready to go to be bought off the shelf through this partnership. Amazon Alexa's blueprints. Anybody now can create Alexa skills. I did a walkthrough screenshot process on Windows Observer last night. It's posted at windowsobserver.com. But these blueprints are personal, so you can put them on any Alexa device or the Alexa app on iOS or Android that you have tied to your account. So they're not public. You can't turn them into public skills. They don't translate. They don't let you do that. But there's simple ways to create pretty cool things like games, quizzes, informational type interactions with your Alexa devices, any Alexa enabled device, and build them your own. And so it's a very easy process of basically 3 steps. Pick the skill, fill in the skill, create the skill, and then you open it up and you use it. So check it out. It's kind of fun to have. I did a really neat one I shared on Twitter this week about my wife's purple hair compared to Barney the purple dinosaur. So we had some fun with it, but you can do some pretty interesting things with it. And if you're a small business and let's say you employ Alexa somehow and you use an account, you could create these things for yourself to use for your customers or employees. I have a hard time remembering my known travel number because it only pops up when I have to book travel, right? So I've now set a skill on my Alexa that is, hey, Alexa, what's my known traveler number? And she replies back and says, your KTN is, and she gives me my KTN. Within seconds, I now have it instead of having to go to the known traveler website, input 5 or 6 pieces of data, and then pull up my known traveler number. So it works for me. That's how I plan to be able to implement this in many ways to help me remember these little things. Oh, let's see what else we got. We're almost to the bottom of this list. I know it's kind of been a real run of headlines this week, and because I spent so much time talking about 17133, but I do want to make sure I mention all these different headlines that are here. Apple Pay support expanding in the US and other countries. I have started using Google Pay more and more now. I pay with my phone more and more. I've had it on there for a long time. Google Pay now has this really cool feature that if I use my associated card, so the American Express card that I have associated with my Google Pay account, if I swipe it or use it as a chip in somewhere, it also sends me a notice through Google Pay that it was used. So this gives me that ability. Let's say somebody copies my card and attempts to use my a card they made in magnetic strip to cheat me, right? Or to manually use it on a website, because I get an immediate notice. If I didn't make that purchase, I have the ability to go block that purchase and to block my card before any further fraud happens. So I really love this feature of that of my Google Pay, that it takes my associated card and it gives me that kind of data. It gives me fingertip data about when my card is used. Every time I use it, I expect it. It's when I won't use it and I get something, that's when it enables me to take action on that fraud. What else? Tim Cook asked this week about merging macOS and iOS and said, I don't think that's what the people want. So I don't know whether or not that is where he will eventually go. There's a lot of rumors about that, but Tim Cook, the guy on top, is saying, I don't think that's what people want. So that most likely means he's not a supporter of the idea or looking at that idea or process. Complying with new privacy laws, new privacy protections to everyone. This is Facebook now. You know, they've been on the hot seat. They said GDPR for Europeans, everybody else gets a different standard for privacy. Now they came out and said that, okay, we're going to roll out GDPR protections to everybody. And now they've published a whole page that talks about those new privacy protections for Europe and to everybody, no matter where you live. So I'm glad to see that. I hope that sticks. There's some rumors floating around this week that Google or Facebook might have been backtracking a little bit on that and not totally implementing it the way it will be for GDPR. But you know what? One of my colleagues was at RSA this week, and one of the observations that she made was that, you know, why isn't more companies talking about applying GDPR protections across the board everywhere? I mean, if you've got to do GDPR for part of your customers, why not just implement that security and privacy for everybody? It's going to result in better privacy and the security of your user data and your company data, because it's mandatory, and it makes sense. I don't know why people wouldn't be doing that automatically. Facebook is apparently also designing their own team to manufacture hardware chips. Not sure what they'll use those for. A good story on ZDNet about facing a major cyber attack. So some interesting reading. I love those kind of stories that I can give you guys quick links to that maybe goes on your reading list and something to read later. It's not something you got to read urgently. But when one of these headlines trigger you, I hope you go visit the winobs.com wiki. You click on it, you save it to your reading list, and you look at it later. That's the goal. That's why I run through most of this stuff so quickly on the podcast, is to expose you to those headlines of interest so that you might bookmark them and use them later and look at them later. Home Depot planning to hire 1,000 IT pros as it builds out its one Home Depot tech. T-Mobile, I'm excited about this one. T-Mobile has launched their One Military and some other initiatives for military vets, active duty, and things like that. The pricing on this is extremely good. Of course, T-Mobile has the plan where they'll buy you out of your existing contract or pay off on your phones. So it actually launched today, I think, was the official launch date for this new program. So I'm now going to be looking at the numbers, and it says I have decent service here in my area. I have to use a microcell for AT&T to get good connectivity in the house. So we're looking at that. I'm going to do the numbers, and I think I can save about 50% on my monthly wireless bill just by getting these phone lines for me and my wife under this new plan. So we'll see where that goes. I'll talk about, if I switch from AT&T to T-Mobile, I will talk about that. I've been an AT&T customer since 2004. So when it was Singular back then, and then it moved to AT&T, and you know what? It's taken good care of me. I've had a few issues, but overall, it's taken good care of me. So making a move like this after so long is a significant deal. It's a big deal, but the process has been built up and is made much easier these days. So I'll see what applies. I'll see what works. And I'll talk about it here on the show. Marissa Mayer. Marissa Mayer got interviewed this week. She's still around. She's still doing some work. She's not, of course, was the last CEO of Yahoo. She is renting Google's original office. Apparently, this is a story from the New York Times. And she's working on what comes next for her. Now, you've also might have heard that something that was under Yahoo during Marissa Mayer's years, Flickr, got bought by SmugMug this week. We heard this late in the week. And SmugMug has said, we are going to revitalize this picture sharing service and picture storage service. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Flickr now that SmugMug goes in and where that goes. SmugMug, if you don't know, does they take a lot of photos and put them on cups and pictures and keychains and things like that. But they also do some photo stuff. So very interesting to see that come up for Flickr. I'm glad to see that. Economy class travel, my last three things, economy class travel, there was a picture and a story floated about these kind of semi-standing sitting seats that might be part of a very, very discounted economy coach class. I could see these being used in Europe. It's from an air show, right? From an air company show. So they were showing off some seat ideas, and they're very interesting. Go check out the link, look at the thing. You have a kind of a leaning rest type seat where you got some weight on your feet, weight on your hips and butt, and your back has rest as well. So it'll be interesting. I do that for a 1 hour flight. I would not mind being in that position for an hour. I mean, we stand quite a bit on our feet, and with a little bit of body support, I wouldn't mind doing that for a short haul flight for a very good discount. But I'm not sure I could do that for, say, a cross country flight. I'm not sure I would want to do 5 hours, even as uncomfortable as sitting in Coach airline seat is. I don't think I would want to be in one of these seats for 5 hours. So go check that out. Tweet at me and tell me what you think about those seats. And then 2 space things for you before we wrap up. Sierra Nevada Corp is going to now start to gear up to build a cargo spaceship and a space station. So some interesting things happening there. Orbital ATK has christened their next generation rocket called the Omega with a capital A. And then I just saw something about ULA's Vulcan rocket and things like that. We also heard from SpaceX this week. They're going to build their big rocket out in California, in Southern California. So a lot of stuff happening in the space area as well. And a couple of successful launches this past week for SpaceX and ULA. So I'm glad I can walk out my front door and look to the southeast and see those rocket launches happen. So that's it, episode 263. Don't forget to check out the new logo for the podcast. It's going to be the featured image for this story. I've shared it on Twitter. My new headshot is part of the @ObserveTech Twitter account, which is where we talk about the podcast. We're going to start to work on growing that as well. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope the YouTube live feed, it's uncut. It is what it is. I hope that gives you an alternative method of seeing this. I'm not sure how the sound has turned out because I have no way to track that. But I hope this works out. And if it works out, we will make this a normal part of the process. And I know it's kind of distracting. Sometimes I'm looking at the camera like I am right now. Sometimes I'm looking at the screen at myself as I talk. Sometimes I'm looking up here at my notes on the screen on the monitor behind you on the podcast machines, because the YouTube live broadcast is being broadcast on YouTube Live via the Surface Book 2. And then I'm recording the audio via this microphone and my sound system into the podcaster machine via Audacity. So anyway, that's episode 263 in the can. We will see you next week for episode 264. And until next week, stay safe. Don't click on weird links and stay safe on the net. Take care, everybody.